Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello. Now I've got some super news. We will be welcoming a guest onto the show on Sunday the 3rd of May. So a few weeks into the future, and we're going to have a very exciting guest. I will give you more details about them the week before. Now, as I mentioned last week, I'd like to cover the astrology of the Artemis 2 moon mission. And next week I'm going to cover the Apollo 11 mission. Apollo 11 was the first time that man set foot on the moon, but I'll be coming on to that next week. I'm not doing that this week. This week we're doing Artemis 2, and I thought, well, we could do the astrology of the actual event itself, but I thought I'd also include one of the actual astronauts, because there were 4 of them and 3 of them were men, and I thought, well, this is the first time a woman has been up in space, so we're going to cover her chart as well, which is very interesting. Now, I am going to quote from Wikipedia, if only because sometimes Wikipedia manages to summarise things in a lot less information than on NASA. I've been on the NASA website, there's tons of stuff on there, and I can't find a short way of, and these are short episodes. So Artemis 2 was a crewed 9-day lunar flyby mission that launched on the 1st of April 2026. With a crew of 4 astronauts, it was the first crewed flight of the NASA-led Artemis program and the first crewed flight beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972. Artemis 2 was the second flight of the Space Launch System, SLS, and the first crewed flight of the Orion spacecraft, named Integrity by the crew. The mission was a test flight supporting subsequent Artemis missions aimed at returning humans to the lunar surface. Blah, 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 blah. Now, you can Google it and find it all out for yourself. I have put a link to the NASA video that explains in much more detail about what the mission was all about. But in summary, the mission was, hold on, let me just get to my summary. So this is on the BBC website, and they're saying that the Artemis program took years of work, involved thousands of people, and is estimated to have cost more than $93 billion. The headlines about valuable resources, the terrain might look dry, la la la. What they're trying to do is find out what's on the moon. Is it metals? Is it earth? Whatever. The US wants to be in the race for space dominance, so obviously you want to knock the pants off China and Russia. They're paving the way to go to Mars, because the idea is to have a little sort of I don't know what you call it, mission control on the moon at some point, and then you go up in your rocket and you stop off at the moon and then you to Mars. Talking about mysteries that have yet to be unlocked, inspiring a new generation, etc. So it was an important mission, very expensive, but an important mission for them. I'm not saying it's important for me, because my opinion of space launching, I don't know what you call it, but space investigation is, I think we really need to be looking after the planet we're on rather than going off to other planets. And there's so many satellites orbiting the Earth at the moment. It's sort of like we're littering the place. And apparently one of the astronauts from the last ones that landed on the moon, one of the guys there, quite rightly, understandably, left a photograph of his family there, but that photograph, it can't disintegrate, I don't think. There's no life forms on there that would make it disintegrate. So I expect if they ever go back to that bit of the moon, that piece of paper's still there. But for me, I tend to think that going out into space, what more are we going to learn that we haven't already learned on Earth? And it was amazing how all of the astronauts that went on this particular mission were all talking about peace, this peace, that peace, the other. And it's like, well, it's all very well everybody's saying that, but that isn't where everything is at the moment. So anyway, $93 billion. So, Mary, you said your piece. So let's have a look at the actual launch. So I've got 2 charts, and we're only doing 2. I've got the launch. Well, we're doing 3 because we're going to do one of the astronauts. I've done the launch of the spaceship, and I've done the splashdown, because they're the most important things. Did they manage to get off the Earth, and did they manage to safely return? All the other stuff that they did in between astrologically. And the other thing that was racking my brain, sort of thinking, how do you do a chart that's on the moon? Because at one point while they were up there, they saw an eclipse, which they wouldn't have seen from the Earth, because they wouldn't have, the angle that they're at, the moon blocked out the sun, but it wouldn't have happened on Earth. And I was just sort of thinking, how do you do a chart? I don't know if anybody's found a way to do it yet. How do you do a chart for a location on the moon? I didn't find any way of doing it. If you're out there and you're an astrologer with some astronomy understanding, you know how to do a chart for the location of the moon, maybe somebody somewhere has done a computer program, I haven't looked into it that much, then yeah, that'll be quite interesting. So we've got the date. So Artemis 2 took off on the 1st of April 2026 in Florida. It's a little island called Merritt Island. That's where the space launchy place is located, at 6:35 p.m. I think they're a minute later than the time they'd estimated to take off. So as if anybody's going to be worried about a minute. But for things like this, obviously minutes really make a big difference, and so do seconds. But what I thought was interesting is the ascendant is 28 degrees Virgo. Now, if you're doing orrery astrology, if the ascendant is larger than, I think the number's 28, if the ascendant is larger, let me triple double check that, hold on 1 minute, 1 minute out. If the ascendant, the rising sign, is more than 27, it means that the thing that you're asking the question about has probably already happened. You've missed the boat, type of thing. A very early ascendant, it's less than 3 degrees, means it's too early to ask that question. So, this is the launch. They can't hold back. Everything's been arranged. It's all, everybody's on board, blah, blah, blah. They can't sort of back out. So I thought that was quite interesting. And Virgo was the ascendant sign, to which obviously the ruler to Virgo is Mercury, and Mercury is located in the 6th house of health and work. So it definitely was a lot of work to get everybody off the Earth. Now, it's a very one-sided chart. It's a bucket chart, because we've got all the planets on the right hand side, and the planet that is in opposition to everything else is the moon's in the sign of Libra, which is quite a nice combo, having a Virgo ascendant, let's be precise, moon in the first. There was a lot of teamwork. They really did appear to get on. I did watch the launch. I think I was in bed when they launched, beg your pardon, and I was also in bed when they landed, but I did watch them as soon as I could the following day, and I followed them over the days that they were up there and what they were getting up to and stuff. I thought it was really interesting. So the moon's in Libra. Everybody's been fair and nice to each other, and all the news items about it, that nobody was sort of slagging it off or whatever, which can sometimes happen when large events happen. People will whatever. And the sun was in the 7th. So those things are very similar. Moon in Libra and the sun in the 7th. The 7th house is close relationships and marriage. The 7th house is similar to the 7th sign, of which Libra is. And it was all about team, and everybody being considerate to each other. So also in the 7th house, don't forget I use an equal house system, also in the 7th house, the sun was conjunct Saturn, and it's in the sign of Aries. Aries is the pioneer, and Saturn's conjunct Neptune, which you know anyway, because you know where all the planets are at the moment, unless you're listening to this 64 years into the future. Well, I won't be alive. So we've got a little stellium in the 7th house at takeoff, okay? But I think having a Virgo ascendant at takeoff, if I was choosing an ascendant, I think I'd definitely want to have a Virgo ascendant. I would want to have some precision in there. I wouldn't want anybody to be slapdash about it and just marry people. This doesn't even happen like that. Mars, Mercury and the North Node are in the 6th, and what I thought was interesting is the 6th house in Astrology, and this is according to our lovely friend Anthony Louis. The 6th house also covers hygiene, and it was interesting how very soon after takeoff they realised that their toilet wasn't working, and not after takeoff, they're too busy taking off, but once they got into orbit they realised that their toilet wasn't working, it wasn't working how it was supposed to, and one of the astronauts had to fix it. But anyway, Venus is in Taurus in the 8th, Uranus is still in Taurus in the 9th. The MC is in Gemini, so that's another sort of Mercury ruled sign. There was a lot of publicity for it. They did do a fantastic amount of commentary for it, and this is NASA themselves, so they'd employed a whole host of people to have constant updates, and it was live on YouTube, and you could see, and everybody could talk, and they could send messages back. And I was watching it with my husband at one point, and he said, "Isn't it incredible, that far away, thousands of miles away, and somebody says something and they can hear it straight away, whilst the first time they went up on the moon there was a little bit, not much, but a bit of a delay, and now they can say something, we can hear it straight away." You just think, well, that's amazing technology. Jupiter's in Cancer in the 10th. Not a single planet was retrograde, and the Sun and Moon were in opposition. That's fine. So when I sort of looked at the chart, I thought it doesn't look especially risky, but then what would I be looking at if I thought it was risky? I don't know, Pluto on the ascendant or something, who knows. And Pluto's in Aquarius in the 5th house. But I say the thing that I was focusing on was the ascendant sign, 28 degrees Virgo, lush, nice. And we can create the chart because this is on Earth. I tried quite a few times to sort of find a way to create a chart for like when they were actually up there. But yeah, I gave up. Now we're going to look at Christina Koch. She is one of the astronauts. Let me just go back to her description. She was born on the 29th of January 1979. She's an American engineer and NASA astronaut on her long-term mission to the International Space Station 2019 to 2020. She conducted the first all-female spacewalks and set the record for the longest single space flight by a woman. On the Artemis 2 mission in April 26, she set the record for human distance from Earth, and Koch became the first woman to travel beyond low Earth orbit and journey around the moon. So she was born on the 29th of January 1979 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Blah, blah, blah. You can find all that on Wikipedia. So let's have a look at a chart. Now, I don't have, obviously, a time of birth. But what I've done is I've used whole sign system just to see what signs of the zodiac she has. So I'm using 6 a.m. and obviously don't know the ascendant, but we've got Mercury, Mars, the Sun and Moon are all in Aquarius, which they will be unless she was born really, really late in the day, which she didn't seem like someone who'd got Moon in Pisces. She seemed more like someone Moon in Aquarius. She's got Saturn retrograde in Virgo. She's got Jupiter retrograde in Leo. She's got Pluto retrograde in Libra. She's got Uranus in Scorpio and a conjunction of Neptune and Venus. So all very nice. She's got Chiron over there in the sign of Taurus, and her North Node is also in Virgo as well, which is quite nice because it was Virgo rising, and then she's got Saturn in the sign of Virgo. So I've also done, so in addition to her natal chart, I've combined her chart with the takeoff, so we can talk about that. Now, I've done the synastry chart the other way round. I'd normally put the person in the middle and the event on the outside, but since we don't know the time of birth of the person, I've done it like, how is this person influencing or reacting with the event? So I've put her details on the outside. So Christina's details on the outside of the chart, Virgo Ascendant. So her Saturn fall and her North Node falls into the 12th house of this particular chart. Her Pluto's miles away from the moon being in Libra at that point. Her outer planets, so that's Pluto and Uranus and Neptune, are in her outer planets now are in the first, second, and third houses of the Synastry chart. So it was a sort of a generational thing. I think she's reasonably the same age as the other people that were also on the flight with her. So the Pluto, which is in the sign of Aquarius, okay, so that's where it is at the minute, 5 degrees Aquarius. Her Sun, which is Sun is 8 degrees. Her Mars is 6 degrees, and her Mercury is 1 degree. They were all conjunct the Pluto of the takeoff, and her moon is miles away from it because it was on the time of day she was born. So that can be quite a life-changing, transformative thing for a person. If they're, so we're just looking at a regular Synastry chart, if someone's personal planets are slap bang on some other thing or person's Pluto, the combo of the two together is going to be transformative. Whether or not that's positive or negative is all down to individual circumstances. The takeoff, Jupiter was in Cancer. Her Jupiter is in Leo retrograde in the 11th house of friendships of the takeoff chart. But what I thought was interesting was that her outer planets, Pluto, Uranus and Neptune, were houses 1, 2, 3 in the takeoff. So that would be like everybody, or she might have the sense that everybody is there behind her, that type of idea. So they were up in space for 9 whole days, and they splashed down on the 10th of April. As I say, they splashed down at UK time something like 1:30 in the morning. I am not awake that time of day or night or whatever you want to call it. So I didn't witness. I would have liked to have watched it live, but it wasn't going to happen. But what I thought was quite incredible is that they took off under a Virgo rising, and they splashed back down with a Virgo rising, and two completely different locations. So they took off on land and then splashed down at sea, and I managed to get the coordinates of the splashdown, or as near as possible, because again, you can't create a chart for the middle of the sea. You can't do it on astro.com that I'm aware of, because you have to put as cities. You can't sort of do an ocean or something. So anyway, I used San Diego because that's near to where they splashed down. And they splashed down at 5:07 p.m. local time, because the universal time was 007. And that was the other thing. I had to double check that the NASA times and dates, they use universal time. Local time and universal time are two totally different things, but what's really good is astro.com will give you universal time, so you can adjust a chart so that it will come up with the universal time that you want. Universal time is time that's used all over the world. There's another version of time which is called sidereal time, but that's sort of like totally local. It doesn't do GMT or moving times backwards and forwards. Anyway, Mary, get on with it. Virgo Ascendant. So we took off with a Virgo Ascendant. They took off with a Virgo Ascendant, and the Sun in the 7th, they landed back down with a Virgo Ascendant. And the Sun's still in the 7th. The Sun is now 21 degrees. Took off with it being 12, landed with it being 21. The Moon, though, which I thought was terribly interesting, the Moon is now in the sign of Aquarius, and it's forming a square because it's within or but out of sign, and it's conjuncting to Jupiter, and conjuncting to Pluto, and Pluto was in Aquarius for this flight. And I just thought, well, Pluto's the planet deep change, transformation. Aquarius, I would have thought, is the sign of the zodiac that cover outer space. It's certainly not an earth-based sign. And then the moon is there. So as they splash down, the moon is 0 degrees Aquarius. And, you know, a few minutes after them splashing down, it's going to be conjuncting Pluto. And then on board, they've got somebody who's a sun sign Aquarius, possibly moon sign Aquarius. And I'm sure it was extremely transformative for her. And at splashdown, Jupiter's shifted forwards by a degree. That's still in the 10th. Uranus has gone forwards by a degree, and that's still in the 9th. Venus has shifted to 13 degrees from 2. That's still in the 8th. Chiron's moved houses. It was in the 7th. That's now in the 8th. But the 3 planets that were in the 7th, Sun, Saturn, Neptune, are still there. But Mars has now just dipped over into the sign of Aries, 0 degrees. Mercury's still in Pisces. So I thought that was interesting as well, because Mars is the ruler to the sign Aries, and they had enough energy, because you've gone all the way around the moon. Have you got enough petrol or whatever it is they use, Air Force fuel or some air I don't know what you call it, air rocket fuel to get back? I don't understand all these things, but they did. The North Node hasn't moved much. That was 8:43 when they took off, and it was 8:04. So it's just retrograded a little bit back into the sign of Pisces, but still in the 6th. And Mercury is still in the 6th as well in the sign of Pisces. But they came back literally with a bang. There was big news about it, lots of coverage. And they landed in the right place, and they were rescued, etc. So once again, we're going to look at the synastry. So how might Christina have felt astrologically? I don't know how she literally felt when they all splashed down. So all of her Aquarius planets are near to that moon Pluto conjunction. So that's her Mercury, Mars and the Sun, and her moon's knocking about there somewhere. The outer planets obviously aren't going to shift anything. They're the same, but how would it still is a generational impact for her. Saturn is still in the 12th, taking things seriously. She didn't, while she was on board, I think this is so trivial. She's got lovely curly hair, and she had to sort of have her hair in a scrunchy sort of thing, but her hair was sort of like, I don't know what you call it, sort of like Medusa, with sort of just snakes everywhere. But anyway, she had all this lovely curly hair, and she'd obviously have to keep it a scrunchy or something, because otherwise your hair goes all over the place, because there's no gravity. You've got long hair and you're on Earth, then your hair stays down, but when there's no gravity, your hair sort of goes all over the place. Such a trivial thing to point out, but it made me sort of chuckle. Now, I can't imagine what it must feel like to come back out of space at zillions of miles an hour. Because part of when I was watching the video all about it, the NASA one, there was, one of the problems that they had was the fact that the thing that comes back onto Earth, the temperature is so enormous, they have to make sure that it's sort of Tefloned, so they don't all frizzle up inside. And the previous version of Artemis, there was some sort of issue to do with it, and that was what sort of held things up a bit. But can you imagine sort of coming back into the Earth's orbit, or coming back down to Earth, and the vehicle that you're in, the outside of it is so hot it would just burn you alive in seconds flat, and you're coming down at such a speed, vroom, like that. It's like, whoa, what does that do to your brain as you come back down? Obviously there was parachutes, and it stopped. That's how they always think, they've got 12 parachutes that have got to go. Will all the 12 parachutes actually and everything did. The whole thing seemed wonderfully flawless. And it takes us to that key word for Virgo, which is perfect. The one word that Virgos love the most is perfect, when something's perfect. But nothing on earth ever is perfect. But that's very much what Virgo as a sign is constantly striving for. It's the sexiest word for a Virgo. If you want to get on the right side of a Virgo, just use the word perfect a lot. They absolutely love it. And Virgo as the ascending sign for the takeoff and for the splashdown. I thought, well, yes, it did. I'm just an observer that knows nothing about space exploration. I know zero, any more than anybody else would from reading stuff on the internet. But I thought it was incredible how they did manage to get the the spaceship up there and to do the orbits and to do this slingshotty thing. It was shaped like a number 8, and they went round like that, and then they come back down to Earth, and it was perfect. And how many years has it taken them to be able to do that? 18,000 civil servants work for NASA. That's a hell of a lot of people, and there would have been probably, I don't know, equal amount of number of those people that made this mission possible. It's an enormous amount of things, and it wasn't just the 4 astronauts who were in there. You know, all the rocket itself and all the bits and bobs that went with it took months and months and months. It was life project thing, and they were so lucky to get all the way there and back without smashing into some satellite orbiting the Earth. Obviously you have to take into account that, but nothing major apart from the toilet, which they managed to fix. So you know, you've got to give the credit for the fact that it was flawless. Yeah, so they got the people back safe, which I would have thought was the most important thing. That your astronauts come back in one piece, because there's been plenty of space missions where that hasn't happened. So I thought it was a fantastic experience, and well done to everybody. No, not going to be listening to me. You know, well done to everybody involved and all the people. Blah 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 blah. Now, next week I'm going to compare the charts from today with just one mission, just Apollo 11. That's the one that actually lands on the moon. And it's very interesting, because it's a long time ago. It's very interesting, the complete differences in the chart. Now, don't forget, this was just a mission that went this was a mission that went around the moon. Apollo 11, they actually landed on the moon, which is a totally different thing altogether. But anyway, I'm not going to give any more away. We're going to be discussing that next week. So I just thought it's important, since this is an event that is definitely worth covering as in astrology, because this is space, and this is a planet that we include in our charts. You know, we use all of the planets. They're not paying attention to all the planets, they were only going to the moon. And while they were away, the moon went through the sign of Libra, went through the sign of Scorpio, went through the sign of Sagittarius, went through the sign of Aquarius, went through the sign of Capricorn, and just as they landed, it just tweaked into the sign of Aquarius. And there are no other planets as we speak at the moment that are in those signs. It landed before it had reached the 5 degrees that Pluto's in, and I was sort of wondering, you know, what would have happened if they'd taken off whilst the moon was in Aquarius, and then it conjuncted Pluto, and then a few days later it conjuncted Mercury and Mars, and then it conjuncted Neptune. Would it have been a completely different story? Did they have an astrologer advising them? Obviously they flipping didn't. But so while they were away, the moon went through the signs of the zodiac where there are no other planets at the moment. I think that was they're empty in the house that I've in the houses of the chart that I've created, but there were no conjunctions of the moon to another planet, so it wasn't sort of lined up to those other planets. I thought that was quite interesting too. But we're going to go through what happened in Apollo 11. So if you've got any thoughts about how we can create a chart for on the moon, I don't know how we do that, then do get in contact, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. If you've got any questions about anything that you've heard on the podcast, if you'd like to have your chart covered, then again, get in contact, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. In a few weeks' time, we have a special guest. I will give you more information about them soon. And next week, we're going to cover Apollo 11, and I hope you have a fab week. Bye-bye now.